The courtroom was too bright, white marble walls reflecting the harsh fluorescence like an interrogation room. Danielle Pierce stood behind the defense table, her tailored navy suit spotless, her expression unreadable. She had fought for years to stand here not as the accused, but as the client's voice. Yet somehow, this morning, she was being treated like a criminal. The officer smirked as he leaned on the witness stand. "Ma'am, you sure you're in the right place? The defendant's seat is on the other side." His laughter echoed thin, sharp, and cruel. A few spectators chuckled. Even the judge's brow twitched with amusement before he looked down to shuffle papers. Danielle didn't move. The air around her thickened. Her pulse throbbed in her throat. She could feel years of practiced restraint pressing against the edges of her self-control. She opened her briefcase slowly, methodically, as if unwrapping a weapon. Inside was the truth documents, contracts, power, everything they thought she couldn't possibly possess. "I'm exactly where I belong," she said. The officer's laughter faltered. For the first time, uncertainty flashed across his face. But before Danielle could speak again, the bailiff's voice cut through the tension. "Case 4829, Pierce v. State of Maryland, to be heard before Judge Halvorsen." Every eye turned toward her. Her name, on the docket, on the lawsuit. The officer's smirk vanished. Danielle's hand tightened on the table's edge. She had waited years for this confrontation, and it was only beginning. The hum of the courtroom air vents drowned the ticking clock. Everything smelled faintly of paper and varnish. Danielle Pierce adjusted the cuffs of her navy jacket, eyes fixed on the bench. Calm, professional. She'd been called many things in rooms like this: intimidating, too direct, too confident. But this was the first time someone had laughed at her. "Counselor," Judge Halvorsen said, peering over his glasses, "you may proceed." Before she could speak, Officer Reed leaned back on the witness stand, his badge gleaming under the lights. "Funny," he said, smirking. "Didn't expect you to be representing the city's firm. Thought maybe you were what, an aide." A ripple of laughter passed through the courtroom. Danielle's hand tightened on her folder. "I represent Pierce Legal Holdings," she said evenly. Reed chuckled. "Right, that your husband's firm?" "No," she replied. "It's mine." His smirk lingered. "Sure it is." Silence. The judge cleared his throat, half smiling, trying to restore order. "Let's keep things professional, officer." But the damage was done. The air had turned heavy thick, with the kind of disbelief that wasn't spoken aloud but lived in glances. Danielle approached the stand. "Officer Reed, on March 4th, you conducted a search without a warrant, correct?" "I acted under probable cause." "Probable cause based on behavior." "What behavior?" Reed shrugged. "You know, suspicious." The word hung like a blade. Danielle met his gaze. "Suspicious because the driver was black." His jaw twitched. "Don't twist my words." "I don't have to," she said. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Maya, her assistant, shifted nervously behind her. Danielle pressed forward. "You detained an innocent man for 6 hours. No charges filed. No apology issued. Do you consider that justice?" Reed smirked again. "Lady, you people always." The courtroom gasped. Danielle's breath caught, but she didn't move. Every instinct screamed to react, to tear through the silence, but she steadied herself. Her restraint became her weapon. "Your Honor," she said, voice clear. "Let the record show. The witness just confirmed the bias under review." Halvorsen hesitated. Noted. For the first time, Reed's confidence cracked. He looked down, jaw tightening. Danielle gathered her papers. "I have no further questions." When the recess was called, whispers followed her down the aisle. "She's serious. Did you see her face? She doesn't flinch." In the hallway, Maya caught up. "You handled that perfectly." He played himself. Danielle exhaled. "He thinks this is just another case. It's not." She paused. "No, it's personal." Outside the courtroom, cameras clicked. The courthouse door glinted under the noonlight. Danielle didn't smile. Her reflection in the glass looked calm, composed exactly how power was supposed to look. But behind her eyes, the war had just begun. Rain blurred the city skyline outside Danielle's penthouse office. She stood before the window, a black silhouette against the storm. Phone pressed to her ear. "Press is circling the clip from court," Maya said, her voice tense. "They're calling it the officer's laugh. It's trending." Danielle's reflection didn't move. "Let them laugh," she said quietly. "They'll choke on it soon." The line went silent for a beat. Maya exhaled. "You always sound so sure." Danielle hung up without answering. Her certainty was a habit, not a feeling. She turned from the glass, and the city faded into memory, the smell of chalk and ambition from her law school classroom. Professor Dunn's voice still echoed in her mind. "Miss Pierce," he had said years ago, looking over the rim of his glasses, "law isn't about emotion. Don't make it about you." She'd stood tall even then. "I'm not emotional, Professor. I'm correct." The class had chuckled. Dunn smiled in that thin, superior way that white men in authority often did when they mistook control for wisdom. "Confidence is good, but humility is better." Danielle had understood the subtext. Know your place and the present. She sat at her desk. The sleek black wood gleamed beneath soft light. Her office was minimalist: books, awards, one framed photo of her parents. Her father had been a postal worker, her mother, a nurse. They taught her that survival was an art form. Back then, survival had meant silence. Now, it meant strategy. Her mind drifted again to her first firm job at Crawford and Bell, LLP. She had been the only black woman in the corporate division. Her mentor, Tom Bell, praised her work but never said her name right. Danielle Pierce, not Pierce. At first, she corrected him gently. After the fifth time, she stopped. One night, she overheard him laughing in the break room with a partner. Smart girl, too ambitious. She'd burn out before 30. The laughter that followed sounded exactly like Officer Reed's sharp, careless, practiced. That was the night she decided to leave. Now, in her office years later, she stared at the logo etched on her glass door. Pierce Legal Holdings. Her name, spelled right, owned outright. Maya entered, holding a folder. City Council's legal counsel sent their statement. They're reviewing the matter. Danielle opened it, scanning fast. The same sanitized language. Reviewing, pending findings, committed to transparency. She dropped the folder. They think this will fade. Maya frowned. You're not going to let it. No. Danielle turned toward her desk again. Do you know why I started this firm? Maya hesitated. Because you wanted independence. Danielle smiled faintly. Because I was tired of asking permission. The office fell silent. The rain outside softened to a whisper. Flashback again. The day Pierce Legal opened. A rented office. For people, one coffee machine that leaked. She'd called every client herself, pitched every contract, handled every case personally. People underestimated her constantly until they didn't. Single quotes. Her first big break came from a discrimination case against a local developer. The irony wasn't lost on her then nor now. Maya's voice pulled her back. The board meeting's in 20 minutes. Danielle nodded. Tell them I'll be there. Maya lingered. You're sure you want to face them today? Some of them think we should settle. Danielle's eyes hardened. They can think what they want. I'm not here to make them comfortable. The boardroom gleamed with glass and money. 6 executives sat around the table, all older, mostly white, all pretending to respect her authority. Danielle entered quietly, placed her briefcase down, and met their eyes one by one. We've reviewed your case, said Harold Baines, the senior partner, and while your position is morally justified, we have to consider public optics. The city contract is valid. Danielle's voice was calm. You mean profitable? He shifted in his chair. Exactly. She leaned forward. And how profitable is silence, Harold? He blinked. Excuse me, because that's what this would be, a paid silence. I didn't build this firm to sell integrity by the hour. The tension thickened. No one spoke. Finally, Harold sighed. You're emotional about this. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Danielle stood, gathering her papers. No, Harold, I'm strategic. And she left the room. Outside, the storm had passed. The city shimmered beneath a wash of fading light. Danielle stopped by the window once more, hand resting on the cool glass. Every memory, every humiliation, every careless laugh, they'd all led her here. And she was done being the quiet professional who swallowed disrespect to prove she belonged. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Officer Reed's team requested a deposition. Tomorrow morning. Danielle's reflections smiled, not out of joy, but resolve. Tomorrow, she would remind them whose courtroom it really was. The next morning, the city courthouse looked the same, tall, indifferent, and carved from old power. Inside, whispers floated between marble pillars like smoke. Reporters clustered by the elevators, waiting for something to crack. Danielle stepped through the doors without flinching. Her heels struck the floor with precision. No hesitation. No pause. Maya followed close behind, tablet in hand, whispering updates. Officer Reed's lawyer just arrived. Thomas Vickers, former deputy city attorney. Danielle didn't look back. Of course, they're circling the wagons. Media's in the lobby. You want me to know statements? Not yet. The deposition room was smaller than the courtroom. Fluorescent lights, cold air, and one rectangular table that divided them like a fault line. Reed sat on one side in his uniform, posture rigid. His lawyer beside him smiled like a man used to winning. Danielle set her briefcase down, the sound sharp as a gavel. Ready to begin? She asked. Vickers returned her gaze. Depends. Are we here for a deposition or a show? Danielle's expression didn't change. If you're worried about optics, counsel, you might be in the wrong field. Maya hid a grin behind her notepad. The court reporter adjusted her mic. This deposition is now in session. Case Pierce v. State of Maryland. Witness Officer James Reed. Reed's jaw flexed. Danielle leaned forward, tone flat and precise. Officer Reed, do you recall authorizing a search of Mr. Langston's vehicle on March 4th? Yes. Without a warrant? Yes. Probable cause? Behavioral cues? Danielle raised an eyebrow. Cues? Be specific. Reed glanced at his attorney, then back. The driver appeared nervous, avoided eye contact. Danielle's voice sharpened. Would you agree nervousness isn't probable cause? Vickers cut in. Objection withdrawn, Danielle said smoothly. Let's move on. Officer, do you recall making comments in your internal team chat following the incident? Reed hesitated. I don't remember. She slid a printed sheet across the table. Let me refresh your memory. The room fell silent. The document bore the header, Baltimore PD, internal channel for C. Beneath it, a single line glared back in bold type. Another one down. CEO or not, they all act the same. When lights flashed behind them, Reed's face drained of color. Vickers leaned forward. That message is taken out of context. Danielle didn't blink. Then please, give it context. No one spoke. The court reporter's fingers froze. Mid-keystroke, Reed's throat bobbed. It was a joke. Danielle's voice sliced through. Racism disguised as humor is still racism, officer. Vickers tried to recover. Counsel, you're editorializing. Danielle's hand hit the table softly. You can object to the tone, not the truth. The tension in the room grew heavy enough to taste. Maya's pen scratched quietly, recording every word. Finally, Danielle gathered the pages and stood. This concludes our deposition. Vickers exhaled sharply. You'll regret this. The city won't back your firm after this circus. Danielle's smile was calm, razor-edged. I don't build my reputation on silence, Mr. Vickers. I build it on record. She turned and left the room. In the hallway, Maya caught up. That was brutal. It was necessary. You just cornered him in front of counsel and a stenographer. You think he'll retaliate? Danielle stopped walking. He already has. This is me returning the call. They stepped outside into the gray light. Cameras flashed from across the plaza. Reporters shouted her name. Microphones outstretched. Danielle kept walking. Inside her car, the silence hit harder. The adrenaline drained, leaving only fatigue. She closed her eyes, feeling the hum of the engine beneath her fingertips. Maya's phone buzzed. They're already spinning it. City PR's calling it a strategic misrepresentation. Danielle opened her eyes. They're panicking. Maya frowned. They're protecting him. Exactly. The car turned onto Lombard Street, the courthouse shrinking behind them. Do you think this could reach the council? Maya asked. Danielle looked out the window. It already has. Power protects power. That's the pattern. So what's next? She didn't answer immediately. Her reflection in the glass stared back, composed, deliberate, cold. We dig deeper, she said finally. If Reed's message made it past oversight, others did too. I want every record, every thread, every deleted log. Maya nodded. On it. The car moved through traffic, headlights streaking across her face like moving bars of light. Danielle pressed her palms together. Beneath the surface calm, something darker brewed, not rage, but resolve. In systems built to protect themselves, truth was always the first casualty. She intended to resurrect it, piece by piece. And this time, she wasn't asking permission. The headline hit by morning. Controversial CEO sparks tension in courtroom clash. Below it, a still frame of Danielle mid-sentence, eyes sharp, jaw tight, cropped to make her look angry. The accompanying quote twisted her words into something colder. Racism disguised as humor is still racism. They'd stripped the context, left only a soundbite that sounded like confrontation. Not truth. Danielle read the article twice in silence. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing texts from colleagues, clients, even her mother. Maya burst into her office, tablet in hand. It's everywhere. CNN, local affiliates, social media. They're calling it the Pierce outburst. Danielle set the phone down. Of course they are. They're framing it like you went after him personally, like it's a vendetta. Danielle leaned back in her chair. When a black woman raises her voice, it's anger. When a white man lies under oath, it's procedure. Maya hesitated. Do we respond? No. Let them talk first. They always reveal more when they think you're quiet. By noon, her PR director, Selena Riva-Wyrie, woman with two bright eyes and a knack for controlling chaos, she laid out printed clippings across the conference table. Fox called it a race-baiting stunt, Selena said. Local radio's worse. They've got a segment called The CEO Who Lost Control. Danielle skimmed the papers. They want a reaction. They want me defensive. Selena nodded. Then give them composure instead. Sit for an interview. Talk professionalism, integrity, humanize yourself. Danielle looked up. I'm already human. They just refuse to see it. Selena exhaled. Then make them. For a long moment, Danielle said nothing. Then, fine, schedule it. That evening, she sat under the glow of studio lights across from a local anchor who smiled too much. Ms. Pierce, the anchor began, some say your confrontation in court undermines professionalism. How do you respond? Danielle's voice was level. Professionalism is not silence in the face of discrimination. It's the ability to confront bias without losing composure. The anchor tilted her head. But don't you think your tone, my tone, Danielle interrupted gently, is identical to my male colleagues? They're called assertive. I'm called emotional. Perhaps the difference isn't tone. The anchor blinked, thrown off script. So you believe Officer Reed acted with racial bias? I believe systemic patterns speak louder than individuals, Danielle replied. If this case exposes one, it's doing its job. The silence after her answer lingered longer than expected. The interview ended, but the clip went viral by midnight. Not the one the networks expected, the quiet moment when Danielle paused before saying, perhaps the difference isn't tone. People replayed it again and again. The comment section split in two, half praise, half venom. By the next morning, her office lobby was flooded with cameras, activists, even a few angry protesters waving "Stop Race Politics" in law signs. Security held them back. Danielle moved through the chaos like a ghost. Inside her office, Maya closed the blinds. They're saying the firm's getting pressure from the mayor's office. City contracts might be frozen. Danielle nodded. Expected. Maya snapped. They're threatening your business. Danielle turned from the window. And that's exactly how power enforces silence. Maya's eyes softened. How do you keep doing this? Because I remember what it felt like to be voiceless, Danielle said. And I'm not letting them take my voice again. That night, she went home late. The city was quiet, slick with rain again. Her apartment overlooked the harbor still, cold, indifferent. She poured a glass of wine, sat on the edge of the couch, and finally allowed herself to feel the weight of it all. The media storm, the stares, the whispers, the exhaustion of constantly defending her own legitimacy. Her phone buzzed again. A private message from an unknown number. Drop the case. You're making enemies you can't afford. She stared at the screen. No name, no signature. Just a warning. Danielle set the phone down, finished her drink, and whispered to the empty room. They've mistaken survival for surrender. Then, she turned off the lights. Tomorrow, she'd return to war. The deposition room smelled of stale coffee and cold air conditioning, neutral, sterile, deliberately impersonal. But beneath the hum of the lights, tension pulsed like a second heartbeat. Danielle arrived early. She never entered late to rooms built to control her. Maya placed files on the table, her voice low. They brought in new counsel, someone higher up, Morgan Tate. Danielle looked up from her notes. The city's crisis lawyer. Yeah, Maya said, the kind they call when they expect headlines. Danielle closed the folder. Good. When Officer Reed entered, he didn't look at her. He looked past her, the way people do when pretending someone doesn't exist. His lawyer followed a man in his 50s, precise, polished, already smiling. Miss Pierce, Tate said smoothly, offering a hand. Pleasure. Danielle didn't take it. Let's begin. The court reporter nodded, pressing record. This is the continuation of the deposition of Officer James Reed, she said. Counsel for plaintiff present, Danielle Pierce. Danielle leaned forward, tone calm and lethal. Officer Reed, Have you reviewed the communication logs we presented at the last session? Reed shifted. Yes. Do you still deny authoring the statement in Exhibit B? He hesitated. It was a group message. Someone else typed it. She slid another document across the table. Then explain why your department login appears in the metadata. His lawyer raised a hand. Object. Danielle didn't glance his way. Noted. Officer, were you aware this message was reviewed and approved internally by Sergeant Owens? Reed froze. Tate leaned in. Counsel, you're suggesting command-level complicity. That's a serious accusation. Danielle met his gaze. It's not an accusation if the record supports it. Silence. Then, may I remind you, Miss Pierce, Tate said, voice tightening, this isn't a crusade. It's discovery. Danielle smiled faintly. Discovery is a crusade. Just with transcripts. The court reporter kept typing. Reed's jaw twitched. You think you can destroy me with one line of text? Danielle's tone stayed measured. You destroyed yourself the moment you pressed send. The words hit harder than volume ever could. Reed's face reddened. You don't get it, do you? I was doing my job. Your job, she said, was to enforce the law, not rewrite who it applies to. Tate shifted, sensing his client unraveling. Let's take a short break. Danielle shook her head. We're almost done. She picked up another page on internal complaint. Do you recall Officer Langley reporting you for misconduct 3 years ago? Reed's eyes flickered. That was dismissed. Yes, she said softly. By Sergeant Owens, the same man who approved your message thread. No one moved. The only sound was the soft mechanical rhythm of keys. Reed whispered, You think this makes you right? No, Danielle said. It makes you documented. When the deposition ended, Tate gathered his papers silently. He knew what she knew. This wasn't about one man anymore. It was structural. And now, it was recorded. Outside, the hallway buzzed with cameras again. Security tried to clear a path, but the questions came fast. Ms. Pierce, are you accusing the Department of Systemic Bias? Is this about revenge or reform? Do you plan to take the case to trial? Danielle paused briefly at the microphones. I'm not accusing anyone, she said. I'm presenting evidence. What people choose to see in it, that's their reflection, not mine. The soundbite went viral again. Not fury this time, precision. That evening, her office lights stayed on long after midnight. Maya sat across from her, reviewing documents. You realize what this means? Maya said quietly. You just linked Reed's conduct to his chain of command. Danielle nodded. And the city will do anything to bury it. You think they'll threaten you? They already have. Maya hesitated. Then, why keep going? Danielle looked up. Because if I stop, they win twice, once for the injustice, once for my silence. Outside, thunder rumbled over Baltimore's skyline. The storm pressed against the windows like a warning. Maya closed the folder slowly. You're not afraid, are you? Danielle's voice was barely above a whisper. Fear isn't the problem. Fatigue is. Maya frowned. Then what keeps you standing? Danielle leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Every woman who couldn't. Hours later, alone in the office, she replayed the recording from the deposition. Reed's voice trembled when he said, You don't get it, do you? She paused the playback mid-sentence, listening to the silence that followed. That silence, the stunned, unguarded space where power realized it had been seen, was her victory. Small, temporary, but real. She closed her laptop, exhaustion settling over her like gravity. Tomorrow, the city would push back harder. But for tonight, she allowed herself one rare truth. She was tired, but she wasn't broken. Not yet. By dawn, the storm had moved on, but the air still felt electric heavy with residue, charged with something waiting to collapse. Danielle stood by her window, coffee cooling untouched on the sill. Below, the courthouse parking lot glimmered with rain, reflecting the city's pulse in fractured mirrors. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Pierce. Her voice was low, male, deliberate. You're making powerful people uncomfortable. I usually do, she said. You should stop. A click. Silence. She stared at the screen until the call log timed out, then set the phone down gently, as if not to disturb whatever line she'd just crossed. Maya arrived an hour later. We got the city's motion, she said. They're trying to suppress the deposition video. Danielle skimmed it. Predictable. They're citing public safety concerns. Danielle's lips curved faintly. Translation. Public embarrassment. Maya hesitated. We could appeal, or release the transcript anonymously. You know the media would eat it alive. Danielle shook her head. Not yet. They expect rage. We give them evidence. By mid-morning, the courthouse felt different. Eyes followed her down the corridor, not the casual hostility she'd grown accustomed to, but a sharper, more cautious stare. A bailiff she knew from previous cases stopped her outside courtroom for B. "You all right, Miss Pierce?" "I'm fine." He leaned closer. "Then, be careful. Folks upstairs are talking, the kind that don't like being seen." She gave a small nod. "Thanks." He hesitated. "You didn't hear it from me." Inside, Judge Kessler presided. Calm, neutral, unreadable. The city's team sat rigid, corporate blue armor. No one making unnecessary movements. Danielle waited her turn, posture straight, voice even when she spoke. "Your Honor, the defense requests to seal a deposition that exposes internal bias and potential procedural misconduct. That is not protection. That is concealment." Tate rose smoothly. "Your Honor, this isn't about concealment, it's about safety. My client and his colleagues are under threat because of online attention." Danielle cut in. "If accountability feels like threat, perhaps they should examine why." A ripple moved through the courtroom. Judge Kessler raised a hand. "Counsel, I will not allow theatrics." Danielle's tone flattened. "Then, let's keep it to facts." She handed over the metadata printout. Reads messages, timestamps, chain approvals. The room fell silent except for the sound of paper sliding across wood. Kessler scanned the first page, then the second. His jaw flexed once. "The court will review and rule by end of week." Tate nodded, composed, but beneath the surface, Danielle saw the flicker of uncertainty. He'd expected her to crumble under pressure. She hadn't even flinched. That night, the story leaked anyway. Not from her, not from Maya, a journalist she'd refused comment to. Ran the piece with the headline, "Inside the Baltimore Bias Case, Messages Reveal Systemic Racism in Law Enforcement." Her phone exploded. Voicemails, media requests. Maya burst into her office. "You didn't know? Then who?" Danielle stared at the screen. The scrolling chaos. "Someone inside." Maya exhaled. "They're panicking." Danielle nodded slowly. "Good, but victory had edges. By morning, trolls filled her inbox. Anonymous numbers, threats, racial slurs, veiled warnings. Then one message stood out, short, precise. "You don't belong in their rooms. Step out before you're removed." No sender ID. She deleted it, then emptied the trash folder, watching the files vanish into digital nothing. Still, the words lingered. "Step out before you're removed." Later that evening, she met Maya at the diner across from the courthouse, the same one they'd gone to the night she filed the case. Maya stirred her coffee. "How do you do it? Stay this calm?" Danielle didn't answer right away. "You stop expecting fairness," she said finally. "You start focusing on exposure." "Exposure doesn't always change things," no, Danielle said quietly, "but it removes excuses." Outside, the streetlights flickered. Rain began again, light at first, then steady. "You ever think about walking away?" Maya asked. Danielle looked out the window. "Every day." "And why don't you?" "Because they expect me to." Back at her apartment, she found a letter taped to her door. No return address. Inside a single page. "We know where you park. Stop making this about race. Accidents happen." She stared at it for a long time, breathing steady, hands still. Then she tore it cleanly in half. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was her mother. "Baby, I saw the news. You need to come home for a few days. Just rest." Danielle's voice softened, but her resolve didn't. "I can't, not yet." "Then at least promise me you'll be careful." "I always am." But when the call ended, she didn't feel careful. She felt cornered, the kind of pressure that reshapes you, not breaks, but hardens. She sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere below, the same men who'd once ignored her now whispered her name in meetings they never wanted. Recorded. They thought she'd crack. They thought threats would dilute her purpose. But what they didn't understand was this. Pressure was her inheritance. Silence had never been her armor, it was her enemy. She picked up her pen and began drafting a new motion, not to defend herself, but to expand the scope of the case. It was time to go after the command structure. She wrote one sentence at the top of the page. "Systemic harm cannot hide behind procedural safety." Then she underlined it twice. Tomorrow, the city would strike back, but tonight, she prepared the weapon they feared most. Truth. Written clearly, signed with her name. Morning came sharp and metallic, sky-washed gray, city half awake. The courthouse crouched under its own weight. Danielle parked in her usual spot, slid her briefcase across the seat, and took a long breath. Her chest felt tight. not from fear but from readiness. The walk to the courthouse was quiet until a voice cut through. Ms. Pierce. A reporter stepped from behind a news van. Mic raised, camera already recording. Did you leak the read messages yourself? Danielle didn't break stride. No comment. Are you afraid this will cost you your case? She looked at him, then steady, unblinking. You think truth costs? The clip hit the morning feeds within an hour. Black CEO confronts racist system in explosive court battle. It went viral. Inside, the air felt different buzzing. Two officers stood by the courtroom door. One she didn't recognize. The badge on his chest gleamed. Internal affairs. He stopped her with a subtle gesture. Miss Pierce, I'll need to check your bag. You never check the defense counsel's new orders. She handed it over anyway, eyes fixed on his face. He rifled through her papers longer than necessary, then nodded her through. Inside, Tate was already waiting. His smirk was gone, replaced by something colder. Quite the media darling now, aren't we? He said. I didn't invite them. Didn't have to. You people love a stage. Her tone went flat. You people. He hesitated, just a breath too long. You know what I meant. I do, she said. That's the problem. Judge Kessler entered, gavel struck once. Before we proceed, he said, I've received notice from the city attorney's office. They're filing a motion for contempt against Ms. Pierce for allegedly leaking confidential material. Murmurs filled the room. Danielle rose slowly. I didn't leak anything. Tate smiled thinly. Intent doesn't erase consequence. Kessler adjusted his glasses. This court takes confidentiality seriously, Ms. Pierce. Do you have any evidence to counter this claim? She lifted the folder she'd prepared overnight. Yes, Your Honor. The leak came from an internal city server. I have the digital trace. The room went still. Kessler gestured. Submit it. Danielle handed it over. Maya's eyes met her steady, fierce. Tate leaned toward his paralegal, whispering sharply. His mask cracked for the first time. After recess, Danielle stepped into the hallway. Reed stood there. No uniform today, just civilian clothes, rough, impatient energy. You made me a villain, he said. You made yourself one. You don't understand how this works. Enlighten me. He stepped closer, voice low. I followed orders, same ones everyone else follows, but they're not coming after the city, they're coming after me. Danielle didn't move. You thought the system protected you. It only uses you. Reed's jaw clenched. You think you're fixing something? No, she said quietly. I'm making it visible. He scoffed. Visibility doesn't change power. No, she said again. But it changes who's afraid. By mid-afternoon, the hearing resumed. The city's IT expert confirmed what Danielle had claimed. The data trail led to a senior administrator's credentials, not hers. Tate's face tightened. Judge Kessler looked from him to Danielle. Given this evidence, the motion for contempt is denied. Danielle nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. Kessler paused. However, I recommend heightened security for all involved. This case has attracted dangerous attention. Danielle's reply was simple. That's what truth does. Outside, the courthouse steps swarmed with reporters again. Ms. Pierce, are you planning to file an additional claim? Do you fear retaliation from the police department? She stopped this time, turning toward the cameras. I fear silence more than retaliation. Flashes went off like gunfire. That evening, she drove home under a heavy sky. The streets glistened with rain, traffic lights bleeding red into puddles. Her apartment was dark when she entered. Too dark, she flicked the switch. Nothing. A faint crunch underfoot. Broken glass. Her heartbeat quickened. She moved carefully, scanning the shadows. A picture frame lay shattered, the photo of her graduation, her father's hand on her shoulder. Then she saw it. Words spray painted across the wall, in uneven red. Stay in your place. Her breath caught, just once, then steadied. She pulled out her phone, dialed. Maya, it happened. I'm on my way. Don't touch anything. Danielle looked again at the wall. The paint still glistened wet, dripping slowly down. Don't worry, she said softly. I won't. When the police arrived, she watched them work the same department she was suing, flashlights slicing through her living room, gloved hands photographing the evidence. One officer muttered something under his breath. She caught only a word, provoked. Maya heard it too. What did you say? He straightened. Nothing. Danielle didn't intervene. She'd learned to let silence incriminate itself. A detective approached. We'll file the report, ma'am. Probably just a random vandal. It wasn't random. Still, will detective, she interrupted. If you file it as random, I'll subpoena your notes. He stared at her, then nodded curtly. Understood. After they left, Maya sat beside her amid the wreckage. You okay? Danielle looked at the wall again, at the red letters gleaming under faint lamplight. They wanted fear, she said. They got evidence. Maya exhaled. This changes everything. Danielle nodded. Yes, now it's not just a case. It's a message. She picked up the photo of her father, set it gently on the table beside her briefcase. Then, quietly, almost to herself, they want me silent. I'll make them document it. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere far off. Inside, her resolve solidified like cooling steel. The retaliation had begun. So had the reckoning. The next morning, sunlight cut through the cracked blinds in pale, sterile lines. The room smelled faintly of dried paint and dust, remnants of the night's invasion. Danielle hadn't slept. She sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. On the screen, a blank email draft addressed to the Baltimore Chronicle. Subject line, Official Evidence Disclosure, Internal Bias Case. Maya leaned against the counter, still in yesterday's blazer. You're sure about this? Danielle's voice was steady, stripped of hesitation. They vandalized my home, threatened my safety. That makes it public interest. Maya hesitated. If you do this, they'll claim misconduct again. You could lose the firm's neutrality. Danielle typed another line. Then neutrality was never real. By 10 a.m., the file was live. The Chronicle published her statement with the headline, CEO releases evidence of racist retaliation after courthouse leak scandal. The article went national by noon. Hashtags trended. News anchors debated on morning panels. Comment sections ignited. Tate's single quotes S office issued a statement calling the leak reckless and inflammatory. Reed's name resurfaced. Photos of Danielle standing in the rain outside the courthouse looped across television screens. In the chaos, something irreversible shifted. Control. By midday, the courthouse was under media siege. Cameras lined the steps, reporters shouting for quotes. Danielle walked through them like through weather, steady, unflinching. Inside, the defense table sat half empty. Tate was there, but Reed wasn't. Kessler looked up from the bench. Is Mr. Reed not present? Tate cleared his throat. Mr. Reed has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Danielle spoke clearly. Then the system is finally investigating itself. Tate's jaw clenched. Don't gloat, Miss Pierce. I'm observing. Same thing. She met his stare. Not when you're used to being unseen. After the hearing adjourned, a familiar voice called out, Ms. Pierce. She turned, a tall man in a navy suit, calm face, eyes like steel. I'm with the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. We'd like to discuss your case. Danielle blinked once. Now, he nodded. Now, the meeting took place in a quiet conference room upstairs, blinds half closed, fluorescent lights humming. The agent slid a document across the table. We've been monitoring your filings. The evidence you submitted matches patterns we've been investigating for years. Bias in traffic stops, disproportionate discipline, internal cover-ups. So this isn't just about Reed. No, he's a symptom. Danielle read the letterhead carefully. Federal Civil Rights, Inquiry, Preliminary Notice of Coordination. What do you need from me? Your full cooperation, and silence until we file. She gave a small, weary laugh. Silence seems to be everyone's favorite request. He didn't smile. This time, it's for protection. You've stirred something bigger than one city. Outside, Maya caught up with her. Was that who I think it was? Yes, and Danielle exhaled slowly. The walls are cracking. Maya's lips curved faintly. Then let's widen the cracks. That night, she drove home again. The city buzzing louder than ever. Protesters had gathered near the courthouse steps, signs raised, voices echoing her name. Justice for Danielle. Expose the system. It felt unreal, her name now part of a chant. She wasn't a symbol. She'd never wanted to be. But symbols weren't chosen. They were made by impact. Inside her apartment, the wall was still marked with faint traces of red. She hadn't repainted it. Evidence, not erasure. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Again. She answered. A pause. Then Tate's voice, tight with something between fury and disbelief. You just torched your career. No, she said quietly. I built a record. You think the DOJ will protect you. You're naive. She smiled faintly. You think exposure ends protection. It creates it. He inhaled sharply. You'll regret this. I already regret silence. She ended the call. Later that night, Maya called. The Chronicle wants an on-record interview tomorrow. You in? No. You sure? It's your moment. This isn't a moment, it's evidence. A pause. You sound tired. I am. Then rest. I will. After it's finished, the next morning, Danielle arrived at the courthouse to find a crowd waiting. Not just protesters, attorneys, activists, reporters. Someone had taped in large screenshots of the leaked messages to the courthouse doors. Keep her quiet. She's overreacting. You know how they get. Danielle stopped to look. Her reflection rippled faintly over the ink. Maya whispered beside her. You did this. Danielle's reply was calm, almost detached. No, the truth did inside. Judge Kessler's courtroom was packed. Cameras, press, silent observers. Kessler's voice carried through the tension. The court acknowledges receipt of external notice from the Department of Justice. This matter will be held pending federal review. Tate rose. Your Honor, this undermines our jurisdiction, Kessler cut him off. It preserves integrity. The gavel struck once, echoing like a closing door. Danielle didn't move. She just breathed. For the first time, she wasn't defending herself. The system was. Outside, as she exited the courthouse, the crowd erupted in applause. She didn't wave, didn't smile, just stood still in the noise, letting it pass through her, the sound of reckoning, of pressure releasing. For a long moment, she looked up at the gray sky and thought of her father's words. You can't always change the structure, baby, but you can make them look at it. She whispered it back to herself now, almost inaudible. I made them look. In the distance, sirens blared, not for her this time, but for the ones running out of hiding. The exposure was complete. The reckoning had begun. Rain fell again, thin, relentless, cleansing. The city seemed quieter, as if holding its breath. News trucks still lined the courthouse street, their satellite dishes tilted like ears. Inside her office, Danielle watched footage of the day's headlines on mute. Every screen displayed her name, Pierce v. City of Baltimore. The case had become shorthand for exposure, accountability. Fracture. Maya entered without knocking. You need to see this. She set down a tablet. The DOJ had officially opened a civil rights investigation into the city's law enforcement practices. Danielle read in silence. Paragraph after paragraph confirmed what she'd fought to prove for months. Patterns of racial bias, corrupt disciplinary processes, concealed records. Maya said softly, It's over. Danielle shook her head. No, it started. The next hearing wasn't in Kessler's courtroom. It was federal Knockliner lighting, sharper suits, fewer theatrics. Tate sat 2 rows behind the city's counsel, eyes hollow. Reed wasn't there at all. The DOJ investigator read aloud. Evidence suggests deliberate suppression of racial misconduct complaints under Departmental Policy Code 37B. Whispers rippled through the gallery. Danielle watched Tate lower his gaze. When his eyes finally met hers, they carried something new: exhaustion, not arrogance. Afterward, he caught her in the hallway. Congratulations, he said quietly. You got your victory. This isn't victory, she replied. It's exposure. He looked away. You ruined reputations. I revealed patterns. You made enemies you can't see. She paused. Then I'll keep the lights on. Outside, reporters swarmed again. Questions flew like debris. Miss Pierce, do you believe this will lead to reform? Have you spoken to Reed? Are you planning to sue for damages? Danielle didn't stop. Justice isn't a payout, she said. It's a mirror. Her voice was calm, tired, unyielding. The microphones followed her like shadows. Later, at the firm, her staff gathered around. Phones rang nonstop. Emails flooded in from advocacy groups, universities, law associations. Maya smiled faintly. You realize you just turned this place into a symbol. Danielle leaned against her desk. Symbols fade, structures remain. Let's change those. A knock interrupted. Her assistant stepped in. Ms. Pierce, there's someone here asking for you. Says it's personal. Danielle frowned. Send them in. The door opened. Reed walked in. He looked different. No badge, no posture of authority. Just a man stripped of illusion. Danielle straightened. You shouldn't be here. I came to apologize. She said nothing. I thought I was enforcing the law. He continued quietly. Turns out I was enforcing silence. Her tone was even. Apologies don't undo harm. I know, but they start the count. She studied him. The man who had once mocked her now looked smaller, almost human. Then start counting, she said. He nodded, turned to leave. But before stepping out, he added, You made them look. That night, the firm's offices emptied one by one. Danielle stayed behind, the city lights glimmering through rain-streaked glass. She opened her father's old briefcase, the one she'd carried into her first courtroom. Inside was the same folded photo from years ago, him in his mechanic's uniform, her in graduation robes. On the back, in faded ink, "Make them listen, even if they don't want to." She smiled faintly. "I did, Dad." Her phone buzzed. An email notification from the DOJ. Subject: preliminary findings, public release scheduled. She stared at it for a moment, then clicked open the document. The first line read, "Findings confirm systemic racial discrimination, procedural cover-ups, and retaliatory intimidation against complainants." Her eyes closed briefly. The words were just text, but they carried weight, the kind that bent history slightly toward correction. The next morning, she stood outside the courthouse one last time. The rain had stopped, reporters waited, cameras rolling. A journalist stepped forward. "Ms. Pierce, do you have a statement before the findings go public?" She nodded once, her voice low but clear. "I didn't set out to become a story. I set out to make one impossible to ignore. What happened here isn't about one officer, one case, or one city. It's about what happens when power learns to fear daylight." Silence followed, brief, heavy, resonant. Then she turned, walked down the steps, and kept walking. Weeks later, the headlines shifted to the protests faded. The city moved on in the way cities do, pretending scars or renovations. But the DOJ report remained. Policies changed, training programs rewritten, oversight committees formed. Reed resigned quietly. Tate left the firm, and Danielle kept working, quietly, relentlessly. Some nights, she still received hate mail. Other nights, thank you letters. Both went into the same drawer, unread. She'd learned that noise was just proof of consequence. Maya often joked that Danielle had become an institution herself. Danielle would only smile and say, "Institutions need audits." One evening, after another long day, she walked out of the courthouse as the sun sank low. The air smelled of rain and renewal. Across the street, a mural had appeared overnight, her silhouette painted in grayscale, beneath the words, "Truth doesn't fear exposure." She stood there for a long moment, watching strangers stop to look at it, take photos, move on. Then she turned away, not toward triumph but toward continuation. Because justice wasn't a destination, it was maintenance, and maintenance never ended. In her car, she sat for a while, engine off, city lights reflecting on the windshield. Her phone buzzed again, this time from Maya. "Message, dinner, you've earned it." She smiled, typed back one line, "Rain check, still working." Then she put the phone face down, started the engine, and merged into the quiet hum of the city she'd forced to listen. Outside, the courthouse clock struck 8. Inside the halls she once walked alone, portraits of former judges hung silent on, but no longer unquestioned. And somewhere in a forgotten evidence room, a box labeled "Pierce Case" sat sealed, archived, permanent, proof that once someone refused to stay in her place and made the system move instead.